So nice to catch up, man. Like, I mean, it's been so long. I think the last time we chatted was probably way back in varsity. And then I think we reconnected last year sometime.
Yes.
And just started, just
Yes.
chatting and finding out about each other. I had seen that you've gone on like a completely new direction in life and so much had changed. And I was just intrigued and interested, about this stuff because I think at the
Yeah.
time I was also going through kind of this whole change on how to manage my health and how to have a better perspective on life. So it was very interesting. It was very, very interesting.
Yeah, a lot has changed since our undergrad and studying certain BSc subjects that
And that's where we first met.
Very different to what we're doing now. Yes, yeah. So it's very different to what we're doing at this time. So it's very cool.
And you did the sports science, right? BSc sports science.
Yes.
Because that's where we met. I think we met in anatomy or physiology or one of those classes.
Yeah, and I think we had chemistry together. That was the worst class ever.
She always used to have this thing, you must crack the code. Remember that lady? Was it Mrs. Malan or something?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think I went to very few of those classes. Somehow managed to pass. When I look back, I'm like, I actually don't know how I managed to pass because I used to get so bored.
Yeah, there was definitely divine intervention that pushed us through a lot of that stuff.
No, absolutely. So let's take it back, right? Let's find out who Ashleigh is. If you don't mind taking it back, like growing up, like who you are, because I think it's important. The one thing I like to do with these is kind of trace the journey. It's a nice thing for everyone who's been on that they reflect on where they were and how they got to where they are. And then, we'll discuss something that I'm very fascinated about, which is what you currently do. So yeah, if you don't mind, just a little breakdown of like growing up, your life, like how you got here.
Yeah, sure. It's actually so interesting that, as we booked to have this video call, I went home and had dinner with my father on Friday evening, and it was very interesting for me to remember a lot of the feelings of how I used to feel when I was younger and growing up. So I think it was quite appropriate that happened, and then today we're having this talk. So growing up was quite challenging for me. I spent a lot of time alone. I think my parents, they themselves were going through a lot of their own stuff, and as an adult now, I can understand, adult things that they were dealing with. They themselves had a very tumultuous relationship that had a huge amount of passion, but when passion can get over the top, can become quite violent. So there was a lot of dealing with that. And then my mom moved to Cape Town when I was 10, and I stayed with my dad. And he was running his own business and trying to raise me, and it was just him and I. So I think, that comes with a lot of its own challenges in itself. And my dad was very social, or is very social, and which means that he was out a lot. And that led me to be spending a lot of time at home on my own. So, I think that creates a lot of sense of, or it brings a lot of wounding to the heart space that's related to rejection, abandonment, unworthiness, shame, loneliness, grief. So that's very much how I spent a lot of my youth. And I think the way that I managed that was, I was a very good athlete. And I ran. And I did track athletics, I think, since I was 6 years old. And that was definitely the way that helped me, stay grounded. And, obviously, just kept running. Yeah, and I actually started running for RAL, I think when I was 12.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so it was what was RAL then, and I think we were the first ones to go when it converted into the University of Johannesburg. Yeah, so it was very sort of destined that I just carried on running for them. And yeah, that's why I did the sports science, and that's why I continued to run competitively through varsity. And it was always just it was I suppose a healthier coping mechanism than booze and drugs and sex and rock and roll. So but it was very much my way of escaping, and I think it helped me a lot to stay connected to more of who I was, as opposed to substances that would probably take me out of myself. Yeah, and then, but again, I suppose you're not really dealing with it, and you don't think anything's wrong because that's just your reality, yeah, and then as a curiosity, and then obviously then once you start dating and finding yourself in relationships, you notice that those patterns of we're just going to say toxic love, like your understanding of love attracts certain partners that reflect similar
experiences,
similar energy. Similar energies, and that's how then you still showing up the same way. Which is it's just unhealthy the whole way through. So after I finished at UJ, I went on and became a personal trainer at Virgin Active. And that was a completely an amazing experience in itself. I was very young. I was passionate about exercise at that time because I saw it as a way to, it helped me survive so much trauma that, moving the body is obviously important. And having studied sports science, we understand the health benefits of movement. But when I was working there, it was very stressful for me because obviously growing up the way that I did, I also didn't realize how sensitive I was. And again, the running was just a way of numbing that out. And my intuition wasn't nurtured as a child. I was told a lot of the time that you can't say certain things like that, or you can't just not like people. Because that's
yes, you can.
I can, and I will. But also, so it's again, so growing up very sensitive, very intuitive, and just having that always snuffed out leads to a lot of suppressed emotions, suppressed feelings. And even though exercising and running is a form of connecting to the body, I was completely disconnected from my body.
So what would you do?
Then I went on to this.
So what would you do when you were like at home by yourself? Like, how would you keep yourself busy before the running? And when you ran, what would go through your mind? Like, are you thinking about stuff, or was it a time to clear your head, or it was a place of peace? Or at the time, would you think about everything happening around and try and purge?
So, sometimes at home, what I would do, because it was, we just missed the days of social media when we were growing up. So,
thank God.
I would just, thank heavens, because I think that would have been way worse. But I would sit and listen to music over, just play music a lot. So that helped me. I would play games on the computer, like solitaire, because that's what we had. Tetris,
Minesweeper.
Those games. I did go through a stage where I started drinking a lot at home on my own.
Sure.
Very, very young. yeah, I think I remember once going on a school camp with a hangover.
Ooh.
So yeah, yeah, it was a real thing. So, but that never perpetuated into anything because it affected the running. So again, it was always how to be a better athlete. And yeah, I think, now that I look back on it, I didn't really think about anything when I was running because, I did 200 and 400. So the race is very fast, it's very short. And all you've really got time to think about is just, blasting off. So yeah, in that sense, all you're thinking about is how your body's feeling, keeping the rhythm going, just focusing on running well and efficiently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, one thing I definitely can realize now, looking back, is that how I grew up and what I'd suppressed and what I was going through emotionally definitely affected my big match temperament. I had the talent to be really good, at running, but I didn't have the emotional capacity and the emotional support, and my mental health wasn't in the right place to actually be good enough. It's kind of like, I'll give you a perfect example. It would almost be like, I want to make friends with you before we race and maybe not beat you just so that you like me, just so that I'm accepted, just so that you don't reject me.
Sure.
So that was the mindset, and that doesn't make a great athlete.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's like such a traumatizing thing to have to experience, because at the end of the day, you're using this mechanism to kind of feel free, and then you're at the same time you're still being crippled by the things you're dealing with at home and the psychological stuff. And then you then have this crippling effect that brings on more mental strain, because now you're wondering why you're trying to not be the best at what you're doing. It's like this, everything's intertwined, like it just affects you. And you think like, I can get on the pitch and it's a different ball game, but we take everything with us, right? Like every time we step onto a cricket field or a football field or the track field, like we're taking a whole life with us, and that clearly, I mean, to try and get someone to like you, but was that trying to get someone to like you because of the loneliness, or was it more because you were told that you're meant to like people? You know what I mean? Like which part was it?
I think it is a combination of things. I think it's more, because obviously when we look at loneliness, what a person is actually craving is connection. And so if I can make friends with you, then that's a connection. And if you like me, then I don't feel rejected. And if you like me, then I'm accepted, and I'm lovable, and I'm worthy of your friendship. So there's a whole paradigm and a whole dialogue that underlies that whole thing. But at the end of the day, you're trying to manipulate the situation to feel safe and to feel loved.
Sure. That's really hectic. I mean, that's like, for someone to deal with that at such a young age, and to take that into an environment. And then like at school, what were you like at school? Did that affect your ability at school? Were you very recluse, like, the kind of person who would just make friends?
I think, I think also part of it, which is challenging when you experience is trauma, and there's many different degrees and variants of trauma, but I think you become quite dissociated. So I don't actually remember much about school. On a school level, I was the best athlete that they'd seen in 100 years. So that was cool. And I think that kind of, at least gives you something.
Some purpose,
Yeah. And, but I mean, I had friends at school, and, I kind of just floated between different groups of people. I wasn't, I didn't feel like I was very much in a clique, because I was, able to flutter and adapt to all the different types of groups of people that are there. And I suppose that's an ability that comes with looking for acceptance and looking for love and looking for connection. Is you're able to, almost like a chameleon, different groups, you're able to adapt to see how you feel here. But I don't think a lot of people knew, some of my close friends from school knew how things were at home for me and how I was growing up, but not a lot of people did. It's kind of like I put on the school hat and went to school and did the school thing and was the school's best athlete, and that's what it was, and carry on.
Sure.
So a lot of people say, they hated school, but school was a break for me. It was a break from a different reality.
That's unreal, and did you get bullied at school? Were you were cool, eh? So you didn't have
No,
that.
I think I had the potential to be a bully, actually.
Because you were the super athletes, and the damaged ones cause damage, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hurt people hurt people. That's how it is. So I think I definitely had the potential to be a proper bitch. And
sure.
maybe sometimes I was or not. But I think that was the main thing, is that not a lot of people really understood what was going on, and what I was dealing with on an emotional level, and how much stuff I was suppressing, how much, because also when you are suppressed, you are disconnecting, but at the same time searching for connection.
Yes.
So it's this constant inner conflict, that's going on the whole time emotionally. And also you don't realize it. So obviously, going along this journey that I have, obviously now at 35, I can look back and say these are some of the themes and patterns and behaviors, and I can see how these certain things play out. But when you're in the thick of it, you don't have any idea.
It's your norm, right? And you don't know any different. Like, I remember when I went through varsity, like, first of all, I'm like super like heavy right now and feeling a little choked up because we were really close. We were very, very close, at a stage at varsity. And I didn't know all of this about your life, right? So I'm going to get back to that because I've got something like that I want to ask you about. But it's crazy when you think back, because like you were saying, it's your norm. You don't know any different, right? It's like when I didn't even realize how severely depressed I was at varsity. I didn't until I went to a doctor and I went on meds, and then I realized, oh, is this what it's like to go through a normal day where you're not overthinking everything? And I found, like with you, when you're fighting for connections, when you're feeling disconnected, when you do have those connected moments, your mind is going because you're trying to be in the moment, but now your brain's also trying to think, wait, am I building a connection here or what am I doing? So even in the moment, your brain is still trying to figure out what's happening and you're questioning. So that even allows you to feel a little disconnected when you go back and think about the meaning, and you think like, hey, so I was having this great time, but it could have been better because while this was happening, I was sitting there thinking about, is this a connection? So it's literally it's this loop that just keeps going on and on,
Yeah. And it's quite interesting because, like I said, on Friday this week, I went home and I had dinner with my dad, and you could easily see how a few words, or even certain body language, or now that I'm accepting my sensitivity, how I feel in that space can pull you back into a loop. I felt it. I felt, here I can go easily back into the space where I feel I'm not good enough, I'm ashamed, not worthy of connection or love or anything like that. And it takes a lot to be able to witness yourself like that and to choose something different. Like that's not my life. That was my life, and that's how I used to feel. But I've chosen something different. I've chosen a path that allows me to be more authentic and accept and validate myself as I am.
Sure.
So yeah, so it's a very it takes time.
It does. I mean, and that's the thing. You only realize that when you're taken out of that space, right? So you had
Yes.
school, which kind of like momentarily took you out of that space. But then I think this
Yes.
is the important thing I wanted to ask. When we went to varsity, right? Because now we're in a whole different space. So this was probably the first time you were completely broken out of that environment, right? So
Yes.
that's when you would have realized what's normal and what's not normal, or what's okay and what's not okay. But now,
Yeah.
for me, listening to a lot of the stuff, right, that I didn't know, and maybe we did speak about it, maybe I suppressed about it, but I don't think we ever spoke about that stuff
No.
in childhood, right? To be honest, because I have a pretty good memory of stuff. But
I'm going to just add that I don't. So, dissociation is real. Just going to say that.
Okay, cool. Which is good. I mean, like my wife's also very good at that. She's very good at dissociating things and breaking away from memories, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that really got me feeling a little heavy in my chest when you were telling me this stuff is that for people who don't know, right? So we went to varsity and we lived in on campus residence.
Yeah.
And what people may not know is that hazing or initiation and orientation was a very real thing for us, like an incredibly real thing for us.
Yeah.
And
it was tough.
And it was tough, right? Because it's not just like a week or two, like some people, certain universities. We had it for a year. Like we went on a year-long thing of real, for the guys, a lot of physical activity, for the girls, a lot of mental kind of like activity, and initiation. And, from things like having to wear name tags and having to dress a certain way every day and having to greet people by these long ass titles, having restrictions of not being allowed to drink, having curfews. It's like lockdown, basically. It was literally like being in lockdown at varsity, as if you had to compare it to something. But it was more grueling because there wasn't like a set time. It was like you get woken up at 2 a.m. in the morning and you have to run outside for the guys, we had to run outside naked or go swim in that waterfall at UJ at 2 in the morning. And it was, looking back, it was incredibly rewarding because it taught me about teamwork. It made me so tough. It really hardened me up inside. Even if I've become softer as a person throughout the years, like deep down inside, when things get tough, I revert back to that kind of moment, right? So for you, moving into res, you're now surrounded by other people constantly after being by yourself. Even if you were at school, you were able to kind of be around people, but go home and then you were alone. Now we're in res where we're constantly surrounded by hundreds of people, lots of boys, lots of girls, lots of attention, and you're living in close proximity to a lot of people. And then you're receiving a lot of mental initiation and mental abuse in the sense that they were trying to toughen us up. So when you look back at coming out of home and what you went through, that must have been ridiculous. Like the fact that you stayed in res till the end and didn't chicken out is absolutely like newfound levels of respect. But for you,
definitely, there were girls crying in the corridors during those first 3 weeks. Like it was hectic. And I mean, one stage we were only allowed to drink pink beverages.
Yes, so brutal
something,
fruit when you were, it was
yeah,
always like you had to drink a pink brutal fruit or you had to drink
yeah,
strawberry
or
milkshake. I remember
strawberry,
that.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah, so I think again, I think there's part of it, like when you look at it like that and question mental, you can probably say like that's not really ideal, an ideal environment. But I think also there's something about maybe having to be resilient from very young that kind of kicks in and like takes over. It's kind of like, well, I've survived a lot worse actually, so this is not too bad. And you're making new friends and you're making new connections. I think the one thing that I do remember being quite tough, with res is, I think they used to bully me quite a bit about, the school that I went to and the area that I grew up in, because I think a lot of the girls that were in the res that I was, that maybe came from, uh, other areas of Gauteng or other parts of the country, and I think they used to call me a snob because I grew up in Sandton
Oh,
and I went to a private
yes.
school, and so that was, I think that even my res nickname was some kind of Afrikaans snort corp or some shit like that. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, so it was dealing with that, and I think they also always used to get my surname wrong. So when they called register, they used to pronounce my surname, it's Tennier, and I think because it was very Afrikaans, they pronounced it Tennier, and I used to have to, I don't know why it used to grate me, but I used to correct them, and then they started doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, but it wasn't so bad because, again, like you said, there was a lot of support. Everyone was going through it, so it wasn't personal. So I think that helped me a lot. And again, I think when you've been through a lot of trauma or you survived a lot of trauma, you've got resilience. And I think I possibly just pulled on that and just thought, there's nothing in res and nothing through those initiations that they put us through that's not worse than what I've seen or experienced. So, yeah.
So you were basically better prepared than most people, because
probably, yes. Because
yeah.
I remember seeing, because a lot of the girls would cry in the corridors or cry after certain things, like if we had to socky with you guys in our pajamas at 2:00 in the morning, there were girls that would be crying afterwards and tired, and I often used to think it's like, it's not so bad. Like, it's annoying, but it's not bad.
That's amazing, because that's the thing. It could have been one of two ways, right? You could have either been the person who said, like, you went with the route of, I've been through worse, it's annoying, but I've been through worse. Or you could have been the person that completely rebelled against it and went absolutely mad and be like, I'm not going to stand for this shit. Like, you know what? I didn't go through what I went through. So, like,
no, that wasn't my attitude.
Yeah. Sure. It's really incredible, because I think that time as well was such a big learning experience, because like you say, people would, because you came from an affluent area and you went to like a really good school. And just for some context, like a lot of the people that were there, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of them were from very small towns. A lot of people are from very small Afrikaans towns, because it was predominantly Afrikaans, right? I was the only Indian person in this whole, like, everywhere. I think there were like one or two Indian girls in other reses, but it was pretty much, so for me, it was a completely foreign world, because now I'm in, surrounded by a language that's, I did well at school, but it's very different when you're engaging and interacting, So I was, and I came from a very sheltered, conservative Indian family in Durban, and now I'm in Joburg. I have all this freedom, or I thought I did for the first year at least. I'm surrounded by these massive guys. A lot of, like, now I'm surrounded by a plethora of white people. And
Yes,
then there's a plethora of attractive people, and there's a plethora of amazing people and exciting and funny. So I was just attracted
yes.
to everything and everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was completely out of my comfort zone because
Yeah.
everything was new. And I remember, like, a story, speaking for context on, like, the people that were there. I remember the one time we were sitting around a bonfire, and I had adapted, right? Because I was like, you know what, I wanted to leave home, and I wanted
Yeah, okay.
to be on my own, be independent, and experience life. I didn't want to fall into the trap of I'm going to stay in Durban for the rest of my life, which is completely fine.
Yes.
But for me, I
Yes.
wanted to explore. Like, I wanted to go
Yeah.
out and learn new things. Um,
Mm.
and I think travel at a young age with my family was very important because that kind of made me very curious as a young person. So when I got to Res, like, so from context for the people, we were around a bonfire the one night, and I was playing on my guitar, and we were all singing along, and everyone was cool, and we were all like a really close group of friends by then. I had loved the place. I learned to adapt and really give some of the best times of my life. And I remember the one Afrikaans girl was sitting there in this group, and she said to me, I didn't know coolies could play guitar. And,
Yeah, but
you
you
know,
special, Preneil, so come on.
no, but the thing that struck me was the fact, because coolie is a very derogatory term in South Africa. If you call like an
Yes.
Indian person a coolie, it's like,
It's bad.
it's
Yeah.
almost the equivalent of using the K word, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
And for a second, I looked up, but I'd become very open-minded about things, and realizing that it's an
Yes.
educational thing. And I looked up, and luckily it was someone that I was like quite good friends with, so I knew it came from a very good place. It didn't come from a
Yeah.
place of hate or.
Yeah.
And I looked up, and I could see she had no idea because where she was growing up, and in her family, she came from a small town where she had literally never interacted with an Indian person in her life. So that's the word she knew that
Mm,
Indian
mm.
people were called. And a lot of the other people around stopped, and everything went quiet because they had realized what she said. And I stepped in, I'm like,
Yes.
no, no, it's cool, guys, because I could see that she didn't know what she had
Yeah.
just said and that it was wrong. And that was kind of like, I wanted to mention that because to give kind of, a reference to the difference in people. Like, you came from Santon, where you
Yeah.
would have known straight away, whoa, don't say that. And for her, it
Yes.
was very
Yeah.
normal. So I wanted to lay that context for, like, you were talking about why people
Mm.
would make fun of you because you were from Santon, etc. And that was because of,
Yes.
the distance and the diversity of not just Indian, white people, black people,
Yes.
colored people, Chinese people in South Africa, but even in our own culture, that
Yes.
two people with white skin could be so different apart. You know what I mean?
Different. Yes.
And I think
And I think
that's,
you,
yeah,
yeah, and I think, going back to it is, I think, when I look back on my life, I definitely think, running at RAL and UJ, and having those connections outside of school, because even when I was at school, I was running with people that were that, that were in RAL at that time.
yeah,
So it also gave me a bit more, I suppose, exposure and experience to different people, different, uh, you know, there were kids that went to different schools that would come and train in our training group. So you're learning how things work at different schools, and I think we also at one point competed in the Afrikaans School League. So even when I was at school, we ran in their season, which was different to ours. So I think, and that kind of was maybe a thread that pulled through to my days at Res, because the reason that I was put in the Res that I was is because one of the house committee people was in my training group.
Oh,
So,
wow. Who was it?
Yeah, so Francesca.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we were running together before I even went to UJ, and so I didn't know what raise to put down or whatever, and she just plucked me and said, "No, you're gonna come here." So I think it was, again, maybe that's tied into part of the resilience, or tied into part of the support, and I was, placed there. But I think it did help to understand that, there are different people in the world. There's the way people grow up in their families is very different. Different cultures, and a few of the kids or children or group of us that were running at the time did all end up going to res at UJ. So we did know each other. So there was also an element of that. You're not alone in this in this space, in the school.
Yeah, especially with like sport, because a lot of people come from different areas, because even if they may not have been able to afford to be at a particular university, because the
Yes.
UJ at that time, they used to call us the Hollywood campus, because it was kind of like the more affluent group of people.
See, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that's what the other campuses would call us the Hollywood campus. But also,
Okay.
I think with sports, the beautiful thing is that you connect with people from all walks of life, because a lot of people would get bursaries as well. You know what I mean? So you didn't have to be in a certain demographic to be able to go to a top university, especially with sport, because of rugby and cricket. So, I think that exposure, you were very like blessed and lucky in that sense that you had.
Yes.
Because I think if you had not had sports, I think it would have been a
Yeah.
bit more of a difficult thing, because you knew it was your fallback thing. Like it would have been a bit more difficult if you went straight from home and school life straight into university. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I think, I mean, even if I think about it now, since, we're talking about themes and patterns, I went again, the athletics and the sport is an anchor for me, because even when I moved to Cape Town to study at UCT, the first few months were really tough there, very lonely. The people are very different down in Cape Town. And what was the one thing that I managed to do? I joined the UCT athletics team.
Sure.
And then again, you meeting different people. You every day you're going to the track there. You're going to intervarsity competitions together and stuff. So again, it's always I find it was an anchor for me and a way to connect with people. I made friends, and that was how I actually survived my time actually at UCT for the 2 years that I was there, because I struggled for the first 6 months. I thought, this is a bad idea and I need to get out of here.
It is different.
It's
very different. And I think it's something that I realized and I kind of took for granted, was the difference in people, right? In between Joburg, Cape Town, and Durban. Like I've realized that in a sense that when I walk around to the malls and stuff, and I'm always like, hey, like, how's it to random people? And in Joburg, it was just like you say, how's it to someone, and they're like, how's it? And it's very different. Like it's very hard to explain, but only being away, because I grew up in Durban, so I was there for 18 years, and then I moved to Joburg, and I was there for 17 years, and I've now moved back, and I've realized that it's so different. Like there's a different type of engagement and interaction, because now people kind of look at me weird when I'm like, I greet them randomly in the streets or at the malls.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing, but it's also like, did you find that because sport puts you in the spotlight in a sense, because that's what sport does, right? Like at school, I played a lot of sport. Like played a lot of sports, and I focused on academics. That was the two things. I barely went out. I think the first time I ever went out was in matric. It was probably when I was 18. It's probably not the best time to start going out, but I found that it it kind of put me in the spotlights a lot.
Yes.
And in a sense, I didn't kind of like that, but that's what my body knew and my mind knew. Even when I went to varsity, as much as I tried to stay low key, I was so curious that I wanted to meet people that it ended up putting me in the spotlight. And then it kind of, I find now that people have this perception of the person you are because you are so used to wearing that mask or being that person who's always smiling or making everyone happy. And as I've gotten older, I found that I'm not that person. And now trying to be that person where I'm actually more quiet and reserved and shy. And then people still have that preconceived or that perception of you that they had maybe 18 years ago, where you were just like, and now it's like, oh, you've changed. And I'm like, I actually didn't change. It's just, and maybe it's my fault for kind of being, putting myself out there as this person. And now I'm completely different. Like, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of people who know me growing up will be like, oh, Preneil's such a good kid and he's never drank and he's never done this and he's never done that. And you would know, like you saw me at varsity. You saw the shit I got up to. You were one of those people. And I was completely myself. And maybe that's why I was so happy, because I was completely free. Thank God we didn't have social media at varsity, because I'd never be able to get a job. There would have been videos of all of us running naked and doing all sorts of weird things. But and did you find that, that being in the spotlight with sports and, kind of you growing up, kind of wanting your own space in a sense because of it was a familiar place. Did you find that it kind of made you conflicted in another sense? Like, was it a tug of war between I want to not be in the spotlight, but I am in the spotlight. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question because I think from the first day, in primary school, so what are you, 5 or 6 years old, grade 1, they make you do like a short little race, and it was from that day that I was always the fastest. So it's a bit difficult to say because on one hand, that's all I ever knew. All I ever knew was, when it came time for the athletics, it was easy for me. That was like an easy time for me. I would win. It was great. It just felt that was something I had mastered, or maybe it was my thing. But on the other hand, as I've got older, and this is where why the question is so interesting, because as I've got older, one thing I really am struggling with is this concept of keeping myself small. So it's this amazing dichotomy of being on the track, winning. Everyone knows your name, the school loves you, it's you out there, you're a big deal, but in the inside and the personality inside it, and also I think from how I grew up and all the things that I was told, or what we can call it conditioning, was don't make a scene, don't make a noise, don't upset anyone, don't ruffle any feathers, don't rock the boat. So it's kind of like, don't be out there, but now you're wanting me to like win and do well, which is being out there.
And so, competitive.
The one thing and now, as an adult and, running my own business, and it's kind of like how competition, it doesn't really work anymore. It's not healthy on this level. And also now I'm coming to understand the truth that actually inside of myself, I've been told to play it small because that's safe. And how do I grow a business, or how do I put myself out there now and be big and be bold and confident in what I'm doing, when on one hand I'm told don't do anything different, just go along, just be quiet, just so again, it's another conflict inside that you've got to overcome. And yeah, again, I think it definitely messed with my big match temperament. Stepping up to the line to run was always like, ooh, I don't want to upset anyone here.
Yeah, I don't want to create friction and upset people by winning.
Yes.
People are going to start despising me or start like,
yes, and it's like, oh, I'm going to lose the race already because Ashleigh's here. Well, yes, but I don't want you to be upset. So please don't see me like that. Like, I'm actually a nice person, but I have to win. So I have to win this race because it's a school meeting or a provincial race. So what do we do?
Yeah, it's like, this is my future. And that's such a fascinating thing, right? Because
yeah,
I also grew up in that space. Like, conflict is bad. Don't talk back to people. Respect your elders, even if they do something that upsets you. Just stay in your lane. You know what I mean? And so my wife is completely different. She grew up in a space where they were allowed to freely express themselves. So I'm in a space where I'm trying to change and shake off the way people perceive me, or not everyone, like my friends, and like, will know who I am, because naturally we're more free around our friends, right? But it's with family, especially with like the older generation, and it's not my parents in particular, just in general, as we know. It's more of that, play it safe. It's about, don't let people think this about you. A lot of it's dependent on what people think of you, and we're kind of like, I don't give a shit what people think about me. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Like, I care about my reputation, and that I want to be known as a person of integrity. So that I worry, that I care about, because integrity is important to me, right? But whether people have something to say because they saw me drinking a whiskey, I really couldn't give a shit. Like, I'll do it intentionally then. So we're kind of caught in this place where I'm trying to shake that off, and my wife is trying to be this free person, but it comes with people, like, oh, look at her, look at this, look at the type of person, and it's not fair. You know what I mean? Because now we find we're in a place where you're actually conflicted, because I want to be who I am, but I'm just like, do I waste my time and energy on this? And she wants to be in a place where she can be completely free. And you end up like, it ends up stifling you, right? And this is one of the things that I've been grappling with. I mean, I love my life. I love everything that I've managed to do and achieve, and my experiences, right? I go through really bad periods with like depression, where I'm just like this week was a really tough week, and it's the reason why I was also looking forward to this conversation, because I know you have such like a unique perspective and mind when it comes to things on wellness and health.
Yes.
And I'm currently, I moved, packed up everything I knew, and only now am I realizing the magnitude of leaving everything I knew behind in Joburg. Like, all my friends are there, like all my really valuable connections and that I've built over the years are in Joburg. You know what I mean? So
yes.
To a sense, I'm starting to feel that kind of loneliness and yearning for that connection again, where it's like, should we go to the gym more and meet more people? And one of the things I'm grappling with a lot, especially this week, the question that's been plaguing me this week is, how do I enjoy life again? Like, how do I get back to that place where I don't want to be in the spotlight, but I also don't want to sit in the corner all day, because I want to find that middle ground. Like, how do I start to enjoy the things I enjoyed? And now I'm at the stage where maybe I did those things of, let me just smile and put on a happy face, because it allowed me to be happy, because it allowed me to connect to more people. But at the same time, I don't want to like go through that process of, oh, let me try and make these incredibly meaningful relationships again, because it's time consuming.
Yes.
Life is so stressful with COVID and, economically and with just in KZN, the recent unrest, like,
Yes.
so finding how do you enjoy life again. So I think for me, you've kind of like managed to break through a big part of that where you found
Yes.
peace. Because I remember in Boston, you were very like you're an amazing person. You're a very nice person. Like I loved hanging out with you because there was just something different, something special.
Yeah.
But I could see you were very like reserved in a sense, except when I saw you in your sports kit when you're coming back from training. Then I saw
Yeah.
Ashleigh, in all her glory, really confident.
Yes.
And then you'd go back into.
Yeah.
Would you say that you're in that space where you finally given yourself that freedom and that peace to just be who you are and just enjoy life?
I wouldn't say I'm there because I don't think that destination exists.
Yeah.
I think as we move through life and peel away more of who we are not, I think we're going to keep doing that, until we, no longer here. And each layer that you peel off, or each process or experience that you move through, will allow you to experience more peace for longer periods of time. But I think life is always going to be undulating, and I think definitely, I don't want to say that I'm there yet, like I said, because there is no there. But definitely what you were speaking about, or what I've realized over the past few months, is for me personally, I'd rather be happy than good. And I'd rather be honest and truthful than positive. So, it's
yeah. Wow.
It's poof. And so that's the whole thing, it's like when we have to check in with ourselves, like, am I doing something out of fear and wanting to be accepted? Or am I doing something that is in alignment with my authenticity and makes me happy, or makes my family happy?
Yeah.
Your family, you and your wife. And again, also not pushing. I think we're in a very interesting time in terms of awareness and people, waking up and learning to be self-aware and understanding their feelings and emotions. There's a very fine line between this like faux positivity, where just be positive and you'll law of attraction, and you'll get what you want, and don't be scared, just be positive, where that's not real. That's not real, because we are designed to feel certain things. We are designed to experience fear, we are designed to experience sadness, pain, suffering. So to pretend to be positive is like slapping on icing on a froth cake. It's underneath, you still feel what you're feeling. And definitely that's been one thing that that I've learned through this COVID experience. But really going back to your question, and again, after going to my family on Friday evening and coming home, I have created a life that offers me more peace, that offers me more comfort, that offers me connections in ways that I never expected. My connection with my animals, my connection to my partner, and most importantly, my connection to spirit, or the universe, or source, whatever you want to call it. And my connection to myself. But in June, I had a really tough month. I actually entered into like another dark night of the soul, where I stayed in my pajamas for a whole month, apathetic, was really working through a tough time. And I think I've got a lot of tools, and I've gained a lot of awareness and understanding myself and what I've been through, that I could say I needed to feel that, because I've also worked through or survived this life using suppression as a tool to survive.
Yeah.
Where what happens if I give my depression or my apathy or my shame or my grief or my loneliness or my sadness the space to speak to me, tell me, you know, what you've been a part of my life for so long.
Yeah.
And I've been very good at shoving down. And yeah, in June, I decided to, you know, give it airtime. Okay, talk to me, speak to me, tell me what, you know, you want to say. And it's kind of very interesting as well, because then I got COVID for the second time after that.
We're gonna talk about that.
Yeah, and it was, you know, I could definitely, underneath all of that was, you know, just this sadness that I've carried for my whole life. So like you say, you know, when I was running, I did feel empowered. My body was very strong. You know, I was, you know, that's an area I could navigate. But, you know, coming back into everyday life or going to classes or dealing with people or family or whatever, I would, you know, completely contract and shrink. And yeah, I just, you know, I've had a very sore, broken heart for a very long time.
Sure. And it's important, right? It's important for us to have those, I think, and express like those dark, because the one thing I find is people kind of always expect positive people or happy people to be positive and to be happy. And it's a problem because we all have dark days, right? We all have dark days. Like,
absolutely.
I know, I mean, and that's the thing. We're in a time where we're able to express, and you know, it's okay to not be okay. Like, that's probably the most cliched thing that I keep hearing now. It's okay not to be okay, but it's true, right? Because it allows us, because when you're happy, I find that you kind of, everything's great, everything's going away, everything's fine. You don't actually stop to take stock. It's just like, I'm winning at this, I'm getting it right. But when you go into these darker spaces, it really allows you to take a step back and reflect, introspect. It forces you to dig deep. And I think the more, I wouldn't say the more often, I mean, not like every week, but if you have this at least a few times a year, I think it's really important, because it kind of like humbles you, pulls you down from, I mean, I'd rather have 6 really big depressive episodes a year than have 2, because by the time I get to the end of the year, and if I have one, I'm so far up the happy trail that to kind of deal with this deep dark place now, it's unbelievable. Like, and I think for me this week it's been that, like, I've sat down and I'm working, and obviously my mind's going, and then I'll take like these little breaks to just think. And I was like, what am I even doing? Like, why am I even alive? Like, honestly, what is the purpose of even being alive right now? And I think, and then I go back to this thing of, I think back to the person I used to be, and I was just always happy, and just, I'd have these little quiet depressive moments, but I found such comfort in those depressive moments that sometimes I go back into that, where I feel safe being depressed and being miserable, because it's so familiar, right? And then I think, why can't I just be this happy, spontaneous, outgoing person, you know, not just for me, but just for my wife, for my family? Why can't I be this person cracking jokes? And it's so frustrating. Life just gets so frustrating because you're continuously fighting with your own mind. Like, I remember when I started working, I was in this battle of, I want to be this hard ass. I want to be this person who does not take shit at work. And then I want to be this person who's a loving and caring and emotionally supportive person. But they can't exist. You can't be 2 different people, because they start to bleed into each other. So how do you find that common space? And that common space is up here, right? In everything you do.
I'm going to correct you. The common space is here.
Your heart.
Yes.
Elaborate for me, because that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I think a lot of people, because we all think it's in our mind, right? We think everything
No.
needs to be up here, but it's
No. Yeah.
up.
Yeah. I think, yeah, so definitely, you know, for my own journey and the work that I do with a lot of people, and, you know, if I have to be sharing and putting a message out there, is the most important thing, and what we're getting pushed to connect with on a collective level, is what is happening in your heart. You know, the mind is amazing and can really, you know, allow us to create certain things and, you know, process certain things, but ultimately where the information lies, where the healing lies, where the love lies, is basically from the neck down, is the body. You know, and I think that's where we're getting quite confused with, is that, you know, we've grown up in a society and a culture of separation. You know, our head is here and our body's here, or our head is here and our heart is here.
They tell you the heart and mind mustn't listen, like follow your mind, not your heart, right? That's what we've been told.
Exactly. But your intuition, your inner knowing, your inner wisdom, your guidance, the small voice of love, is not here. You know, this is the inner critic. This is the space where the conditioning sits. This is the space where the trauma paradigm is playing out, is in the head. Whereas if we drop into the heart space, or even lower into the womb space, deep within the body, there's a different voice. There's a different voice that's kinder, that's softer, that's more gentle, that comes from a place of love. A lot of the time when we move or work with the head, it's a lot of fear-based narratives, you know. We do things because we're scared, or we do things because we are desperate, or trying to control something. You know, when we try and control life, it's very much coming from the head space. Whereas if we can take a moment and learn to drop into the heart and into the body, we make choices from our inner knowing and our intuition, which comes from we're making choices and decisions from love, not from fear.
Yeah, sure.
But it takes practice, because also if we're going into the heart, you must remember that, you know, this is the space where we feel things, you know. So most of us have suppressed a lot of emotions and feelings, and in order for us to experience, like you said, those happy moments, joy, love, peace, freedom, we also have to feel the other end of the spectrum, because the heart is also about balance. You know, you don't have light without dark. You don't have joy without the depression. And what we need to start doing is, you know, moving into that space and learning that we can be held and supported in both our dark and our light. And
can coexist.
In order for us, yes, and for order, well, it does exist. And I think the grappling of the mind is not accepting the duality that lies within the heart. You know, so it's, and when we talk about the dark or the shadow, you know, Carl Jung refers to it as the shadow psyche, is it's not parts of us that are bad. It's parts of us that we have rejected because it's not, they've surfaced and have been shown to us that we're not accepted if those are out in the world. You know, so for example, you know, being depressed when you're young is, you know, it's not acceptable. You know, you've got to perform, you've got to do well at sport, you've got to do well at school, you've got to achieve, you've got to be busy, you've got to be productive. And, you know, if you're suffering with depression in your heart, you know, your mind's going to start a conversation of, well, I'm not busy enough, so I'm not good enough. Like, what's wrong with you? or something along those lines, where we need to be saying, actually, your depression is welcome, your sadness is welcome, your apathy or your shame is welcome and is lovable. You are lovable with your depression and your joy, your apathy and your connection. And that's more of the narrative that we need to start implementing into our culture and into our society, is that no matter what you've got going on, your dark and your light is lovable exactly as it is. And just a recent initiation that I went through spoke to me about when someone is fully loved, they are then able to experience their full potential. And that is what healing or offering a healing space is about, is to offer a space where you're fully accepted, there's no judgment, and it is a space of love that is held for you, and in that you are able to experience yourself and what your potential is and can be.
Wow.
Sorry.
No, this is amazing.
We went there.
No,
Yeah.
we have to. This is what it's about.
Yeah.
This is why I wanted you on here, because it's not just about me at all. It's literally about, I think we're just in a weird space where, like you say, our mind for so many years, like our brain has been telling us, and it's genetics and years of, like evolving as human beings, that we go back to that primitive brain. And that I was in a discussion where our brain goes or in a talk recently where they were talking about our primitive brain and how it kind of like we're constantly in this fight or flight. And over the years, that's kind of stayed in us. So we kind of like in a constant state of stress. Like our brain is constantly, the moment something happens, it's just we just let all those hormones out, and then we're constantly stressed. And then we need to be smart about it. And that's where like the heart comes in, because we have to trust what's here. But for so long, we're in a world, how do you break through that in a world where, yes, being good and people want to be loved, but they get forced into a place where we need to survive and to compete, or to take it to the next level, you have to be a certain way. And I think that's where people are struggling. It's because we've worked in these corporate environments where you're told you need to be hardcore, otherwise you're not going to make it, because if you don't, someone else will. But that acceptance of, what, I'm okay with who I am, and being the kind and soft person, because one day it'll work out for me. And it's a matter of choice, right? Like at some point in my life, I made a choice where I said that I don't want to, like, I'm ambitious, but I'm not going to be ambitious to the point where I'm unhappy, because I can get anything I want, but am I going to be happy when I go to bed at night with the person that I've become? It's easy to be, I'm not saying it's easy to be a dick. That also comes with its challenges. Like,
I think it is easy.
it is easy, but there's also a part of you that you can only pretend for so long before it becomes like exhausting, because it's like it's not who you naturally are as a person. Like, I can scream and shout. I mean, I've had many moments of where people at varsity would say that I was a complete asshole. Like, there are moments with really good friends where they'd be like, you know what, Preneil, dude. Like, there are moments where we still laugh about it now, where they're like, yeah, remember that night, when you were a complete ass. And I was like, I do.
Yes.
But it's in a world, where I think we're all kind of faced with being kind. We have to be kind. We're realizing that your job doesn't define who you are, and it's okay to accept yourself for who you are. The term that's being thrown around is mindfulness, right? So you're speaking about this thing of, being accepting, being aware of your emotions. So it's should in your head, should it be heartfulness or wholeheartedness or fullness as opposed to mindfulness?
Yes, I was about to say, actually, it's heartfulness that we need. And I think something that's really important is self-awareness. You know, so what is happening in myself, or in relation to my life, in relation to my friendships and my connections, like how am I showing up in those things, and also how do certain things actually make me feel. Again, feeling, connecting to the heart, how does my job make me feel? How does my, am I doing something because I was told to do it, or or is this something that really makes me feel good, or is this something that makes me not feel good? And I think that's what's really coming through a lot with COVID at the moment, is if you look at where COVID really hits people, it's here, it's not here. So again, it's
below
making
the
it's
neck.
it's heart and it's lungs, and it's really making us it brings up a lot of feelings. So a lot of people that have experienced COVID have spoken about actually how emotional it is. And yes, and they've had memories come up from traumas that they've experienced. It's quite a thing. And again, it's here because this is the space that we carry a lot of stuff. Again, is it loneliness? Is it sadness? And the heart and specifically the lungs carry the emotion grief. So if we're looking at what COVID is doing and affecting the lungs, or helping us have issues to breathe and take in life, how many of us have experienced grief that is ungrieved, ungrieved grief? A lot of us carry sadness and a grief. For example, like you, Preneil, leaving Joburg and moving to Durban, that's a grief. It's a loss. And it's to say, well, possibly, this week and how you've been feeling, there's a sadness there that you've left behind a certain life or certain connections, and you've moved on to something new. And it's a natural part of growth, and it's a natural cycle that we're always going to move through. We're always moving through death, life, and rebirth. And but what we don't do is we don't grieve the deaths, whether they be jobs, whether they be parts of ourselves, whether they be friendships, connections. Even, for example, now at the moment, and what I've moved through, and having had COVID recently, it's I'm wanting to start working quite differently, and it's to say, have I grieved my old business, or have I grieved the person that I was when I used to work in a specific way? And probably that's not yet, it's coming. But there's always this thing of we have to acknowledge that we've moved through a cycle, and we don't give ourselves a chance to do that. You've uprooted your whole life that you've had here in Joburg, and again, also, a big part of my work is using nature as one of our most profound teachers. What happens when you uproot something, and you replant it? It's not all of a sudden going to flourish and bloom and grow flowers straight away. Some of its leaves are going to die. The roots need to settle. It takes time to then reestablish itself in that soil. And we are very much a part of nature. Nature is part of us, and we the same. When we go through an uproot, we're gonna not exactly be blossoming and producing fruit straight away.
And that's the thing, and that's the most interesting thing, because in my mind, I start to question everything, right? The move, and leaving everything I knew. In my heart, I know this was the right thing to do. Like, in my heart, I know that I got the job that I really wanted. I got to change and have a change of everything, a change of scenery. I got to live by the beach. I got in my heart, I know everything is right. Everything
Yes.
about what happened, there's a completely perfect reason for why everything has happened. I know in my head, I mean in my heart, that this is a part of a piece, right? And you can only look at the pieces when you look backwards. I know
Yes.
in my heart that this is a very important, if not the most important piece in my professional career for something that's coming in the future.
Yes.
So maybe in 10 years we'll talk and I'll be able to like tell you about that.
Yeah,
So
that
in
was
my
it.
heart, I know, but like it's the mind. The mind is the problem because
Yes.
the mind, the moment something doesn't happen, you start to think, you start to question everything. Like you start to question, was it the right thing for me to do to my family, to uproot us, to do, all of that.
Yes.
And it's so interesting when you were talking about the breathing and the lungs and the life, right? Because this is why breathing is such an important part of our mental state. It's a thing, like breathing exercises and techniques and
Yes.
all of these things are actually a really important thing because I've been reading a lot about it, watching lots of videos about how
Yes.
breathing can change your mental state. That's why they say when you have a panic attack or you're stressed, take deep
Breathe.
breaths, breathe.
Yes.
It's like an actual thing and being mindful of your breathing. That's why meditation, picture
Yes.
breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. Stop, listen to the
Yes.
sounds. Like, everything ties together.
You're speaking into a lot of important things that hold a lot of depth, and one thing that has occurred to me, through doing this work, and through reading a lot of books and connecting to different things, and different people and experiences, is that one thing that, if you want to say, our soul or our spirit remembers or engages with the most is how we have felt through life. So, sometimes doing work with people that are crossing over and are passing on is, like you say, they don't say, "Oh, it was amazing because I built a multi-million-dollar business." They say, "It was actually quite sad," or "I'm sorry I didn't forgive that person," or it always boils down to how you feel. And I think that's always, if I ever get distracted with my work or whatever I'm doing, is that I always remember that is the most important thing that we have in this life is how we feel. The thing that we remember, the thing that we carry, is how we feel. And that can again be determined by many different things. So you spoke about illness and medication, and I just wanted to tap in here and say that there's a very big difference between cure and heal.
Okay.
So curing is very much you taking your microdose for your back. Healing is going to the medicine person and saying, "Why is my back sore?
Yes.
What is happening in my body, in my heart, in my spirit, in my mind, that is making
Causing.
my body show me that I have pain somewhere? There is something happening in my subconscious, because the body is a representation of what is happening in the subconscious mind. So if we've got illness and shit's not working, that means that there's stuff in the back there, beliefs, narratives, conditioning, programs about how you see life, how you respond to life, that isn't working for you. And that is ultimately, a lot of the work that I do is I'm the mediator between you and your body.
Sure.
So your body's speaking, your body's saying, "I'm in pain," and our society and our culture focuses on numbing stuff out, painkiller, numb the pain, but pain is communication.
What's that thing? Pain
Pain-
deserves to be felt. What's that saying?
Yes.
Is that like from a movie? It is. I think it's from. Well, it's from Perks of Being a Wallflower. I think pain deserves to be felt.
Yeah, and pain gives us a really good indication that there is disharmony in the body and in the spirit. And that's where the word disease comes from, dis-ease. Something in my heart, in my mind, in my spirit, in my body is not feeling easy.
Sure.
So, that's, we look at Western medicine and pharmaceuticals, and it's really great for diagnostics and, for helping us find what the problem is. So like, for example, if you get bitten by a snake, you need to go to the hospital and get the treatment. You have to. But what's really important for you is to have the self-awareness to then go to your medicine person and say, why did I get bitten by the snake?
Sure.
That's where the two things need to meet. That's where the holistic approach needs to meet each other, is to say, yes, this is what's wrong, and this is the treatment that I may need, but what is actually happening here? Why do I have this?
Yeah. Wow.
So I think, that's really, really, really important for people really, it's okay to ask the questions. It's okay to be curious. It's okay to simply, why do some people get some things and other people not? Something is happening in the body and in the spirit. And it's okay for us to be curious and ask why, and then to go in, healing the wounds, not just putting a band-aid of Miprodol over it. To say, actually, what is the wounding of the migraine?
And I love what you said,
so that's very much
resonated, was the thing of the difference between healing and the cure, which is really, I think, such a very profound moment for me, as well in this conversation, is that it's because we think of it as the same thing, like most days, right? Like, I'm healed, I'm cured. It's not. It's like healed is you're okay for now, but it could come back. But cured means it's completely eradicated, and that's such a subtle but powerful difference between the two words, which I think I never realized until right now.
And healing, allows us to go to the root of the problem, deep down, deep within the body. What is the story you keep telling yourself that you believe is making you sick? And we need to just pull that root out, and you need to start telling yourself a new story, because there are many different truths, and sometimes what we believe is not necessarily the truth. Yeah.
Sure. Ash, I think you have got something really special, and I think that it's something that's going to become even more pivotal in not just society, but just in how human development and how humans look to the future and how we actually survive, because at the rate we're going, we're not going to survive. I mean, the amount of stress and the amount of concern and worry and the amount of pain that's resonating throughout the world right now, and to bring it closer, it's not even just throughout the world, it's like personally. I mean, I opened up about things that I didn't even know I needed to open up about to you. I mean, my wife and I talk about stuff all the time. It's one of our very important things. And going back to the thing of how earlier in the discussion, where she grew up in a very open and communication based household, and we communicated growing up, but not about the things that we were feeling. And she's taught me to speak about that more often. And I think I'm like that with people when I'm one-on-one with them. I did a lot of it when I was at varsity. I became very close to people because of my ability to connect with people on a deep level. Um, so at home, I mean, we speak about it, but it's easy to get caught in the thing of and think that okay, cool, we're there for each other, we understand each other. But when you're having a conversation with someone like you, it's a true understanding of that not only cements what you were thinking, but it actually helps you formulate action, a way
Yes.
of moving forward and finding comfort just in hearing someone say it. So I
Yes.
think like what you do is it's going to be so important. And I think um, I'm really hoping that more people will contact you and start to like understand it, even if it's not
Yes.
now, but while they digest stuff, and go
Yes,
out there.
for sure.
So, like, what sort of books can people, apart from ideally, I want them to come to you. I want people to be able to come to you. No, straight up. I mean, honestly, I want people to come
Thank
to
you.
you and be able to open up and speak about it and tap
Mm,
into it. But the reality is not everyone eases straight into things. Some people want to do
no.
their research first. They want to look into it. So,
Mm.
you know, and what are some of the resources people, I mean, you send out a newsletter, so I'd love for people to go and check out, subscribe to that, go to your
Mm.
website, ashleigh-jayne.co.za. But in the meantime, while some people may process it, what are some of the tools and like some of the books or resources people can take a look at that maybe helped you along the way in your journey?
Um, so one thing that's just coming through for me now that's is important to tell people, and again, it's about that connection to nature, is that there are certain aspects to our whole being that we can use different elements for the different elements of nature for to support our healing. So our body is directly linked to the earth. So when we are feeling discomfort, pain, whatever in our physical body, go to the earth, go to places in nature where there's earth, lie with your body on the earth itself. When you are feeling emotional discomfort or dis-ease or struggling with things emotionally, you go to the water, go be near water, bath, shower, swim, be with a lot of water. When you are feeling discomfort in your mind, or your mind is all scattered and all over the place, that's the element of air is connected to the mind. So go be outside, get fresh air, breathe, take deep breaths. We spoke about that earlier. Let the wind blow your face, let the wind take your worries. And when you are feeling discomfort in your spirit, that is when we go to the fire. So you take your dis-ease and discomfort that's in your spirit, and you maybe light a candle, offer prayers, offer blessings, make a fire, throw in your worries with a log or dried herbs and stuff. So again, it's really important. We have everything that we need to support and heal ourselves around us. And one of the strong messages, like I said, that was coming through that I needed to share with you and tell you is that when we connect to the different elements of nature, we are able to heal ourselves. All of us have the ability to heal ourselves if we connect to these things. So the earth is connected to our body, the water is connected to our heart and our emotions, the air or wind is connected to our mind and our mentality, and the fire is connected to our spirit. So whenever we are feeling whatever, rattled in any of those areas, go to nature for that healing. And then in terms of resources and books, wow, I've read so many things. But the main one that is coming up for me to share with you today is A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And yeah, he speaks a lot about the consciousness of and the subconscious, and how, because ultimately that's what we are doing. We are creating a new earth. And a new earth doesn't necessarily mean the planet is going to be changing. We are the new earth.
Yeah.
We are the new earth by raising our awareness, by raising our consciousness, by choosing kindness and love over fear and panic. So yeah, his book speaks a lot about many different things, and how to just be more aware and more awake in yourself and your relation to others and your relation to the planet. You know, what we're getting pushed to do at the moment is take care of our homes, and our homes are the earth. And that's, you know, very, very important personally to me, you know, to honor the earth and care for our planet that unconditionally sustains us through all things that we do. So yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Ash, I think,
Cool.
you're a super special person. It's
Thank
been
you.
absolutely incredible catching up, and just knowing you, knowing your story. I learned so much more about you as a person, about what you do, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to just catch up. And I think what you're doing is special. I think you're super special. And I've got so much love and respect for you. And I really hope that, you know, in your journey, you continue to heal and to really help people find, you know, in themselves, and also find in yourself what brings you happiness and joy. And yeah, people, you can go to Ashleigh-Jayne, that's ASHLEIGHJAYNE.co.za, to find out more information, and they can connect you there. But I think, I can't wait. There's so much more that we can tap into, and I want to do that at a later stage, especially with the ceremonies that you do and stuff. So we'll definitely get back into that at some point. But given a lot of people a lot of things to think about, and
good.
Thank you so much.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing, Preneil. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the questions, and also thank you for creating this safe space and the safe container that we could chat about all these things on all these levels.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks.
Cool.
I'll chat to you soon, and take care. Don't get COVID again.
Again. Bye.
Cheers, Ash.
Bye.